Will disgraced South Carolina attorney turned family annihilator Alec Murdaugh get a new trial? We have an educated guess.
If I was a betting man, I would think it's almost a 5-0 vote, and that is shocking.
That's right. Alec Murdaugh, convicted of killing his wife, Maggie, and his son, Paul, serving life sentences, two of them behind bars, plus several other years for his financial crimes that he pled guilty to. He might get a new trial. It's a case that I know pretty well. I covered his arraignment when he was arraigned on those murder charges in South Carolina. I was also in his jail cell when he was held in the courthouse in Colleton County, and I sat right behind Buster during that 6-week-long trial. I watched him testify, and dear old dad, I only saw snot, not tears, when he looked at the jury. And speaking of the jury, they have come under fire since convicting this family annihilator of murdering his family in cold blood. They had to retain attorneys of their own. And I have that attorney on the program, Eric Bland. He's going to talk about this case. He's going to talk about the jurors, give us an update on that, and his educated guess and why he thinks Alec may or may not get a new trial. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Now, the case of Alec Murdaugh. Here to help break it all down and the case against Alec Murdaugh and what we're expecting, we have a very special guest, attorney Eric Bland, Bland Richter Law Firm in Columbia, South Carolina, also the co-host of Cup of Justice podcast and the best-selling author of Anything But Bland. I'll have the information in my show notes. So first off, great to see you. And when we're talking about this case that never ends, what are you expecting with the appeal?
Well, the word on the street is it's coming sooner rather than later, which again is the second surprise that we all have had. The first surprise came when we listened to the oral arguments in February and how hard the 5 justices were against the state as opposed to the defense. That was the first surprise. We thought that we're not going to get a decision until the summer. That's what most of the lawyers forecasted based on past appellate experience that we have, that usually it takes about 5 months, 6 months to write an opinion, especially of this nature. I fully expect that this is going to be a very, very long opinion. There could be some concurrences by justices, and there may be a dissent. But the word on the street that I'm hearing from a number of sources is that the decision could come sooner. From what I thought, I believe that Alex had a better chance on the federal court level to get his case reversed based on that former Chief Justice Jean Toal applied the wrong standard when determining juror interference. There are 2 standards, Matt. The federal standard says that all you have to show is juror interference that goes beyond normal discussions with jury about, when do you want to have lunch? When do you want to go home? What the hours of court are going to be? We're going to stay over in a hotel. And the allegations were that the former clerk of court, Becky Hill, who has pleaded guilty to crimes that don't necessarily touch on the jury issues, but certainly taint her participation in the trial. All you have to show is that there was this juror interference and you get a new trial. Justice Jean Toal applied a different standard, not the Remmer standard, but a different standard that said you not only have to show the juror interference, but you have to show that it altered the outcome of the trial. And we represented, my firm, 6 of the jurors, Matt. And 6 of the jurors said not only did they not hear any interference or anything untoward by Becky Hill, but that their verdicts were the product of their own free will, based on the evidence, based on the judge's charges, based on the testimony that was heard in court. And Justice Toal applied that standard and felt that 11 of the 12 jurors clearly said there was no interference and that there was nothing that influenced their verdict. There was a 12th juror who said that she was influenced not only by Becky Court, but she felt pressured into a verdict and that she may have probably voted differently. However, all the jurors raised their hand and were polled after the verdict came in and said that the verdict was based on their own free will without duress or coercion. And Justice Toal felt that she was not credible because she gave conflicting affidavits. So we all thought as lawyers, once this case got to the state Supreme Court, there's no way they're going to overrule a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And that Alex, if he was going to get relief, would get it when he did a habeas corpus or a direct appeal in federal court. But after hearing those oral arguments and how hard the state not only had to answer on the juror interference issues, but those 5 justices were highly critical of the trial judge for letting in the financial crime evidence, Matt. And if I was a betting man, I would think it's almost a 5-0 vote that he's going to get a new trial, or at least a 4-1 vote. And that is shocking because we never saw that happening. Now you're going to ask me as a lawyer, do I agree that Alex should get a new trial? It's a hard question, but the answer is we have a Sixth Amendment right to a fair jury trial. It's a constitutional issue. And that's why I think the federal standard may apply. And the reason we're all concerned about a new trial is our system works not only for the best of us, but it works for the worst of us. So as a lawyer, I'm happy that the rule of law applies across the board. To a normal citizen, they may not understand that. Why does Alex get a new trial? There were 12 jurors that heard evidence. But the question is, was there that juror interference? So the Supreme Court could do 2 things. They could, 3 things. They could affirm Justice Toal and then nothing happens. They could send it back to Justice Toal and tell her to apply the federal standard to see if there was really juror interference, and that's all she should decide. Or they could say the trial was so infected by a multitude of juror issues and the financial crimes being let in that Alex was denied his right to a fair jury trial under the Sixth Amendment, and he gets a new trial. For me, I think the financial crimes had a place in that trial. And I think that the trial judge put barriers on that and limited in time and scope from May of 2021, when my client, Tony Satterfield, called him on the phone, to the June 10th potential motion that Mark Tinsley was going to have in the Mallory Beach case, where they were going to hold Alex in contempt for failing to produce financial information. That was the state's justification for motive. Motive is not an element of murder. You do not have to prove motive. You just have to prove malice and a forethought. And the reason, Matt, is because motive is never pure. You know, for us, what, you were going to kill your wife and kid because you were under some financial pressure? I mean, that's no reason to do it. But to a psychopath like Alex and a narcissist like Alex, it made all the perfect sense in the world because it diverted the attention away from all his theft. If I kill Maggie and Paul.
Well, jurors nowadays, I talk to a lot of them after covering these trials across the country. And I sat during that trial in Colleton County for weeks and weeks. I sat behind Buster. But, jurors, in my opinion, they want what they see on television. They want a reason to give their conviction. I wanted to hear more of the evidence of the murder. And there's a lot missing with that.
Yes and no. I can disagree with you on that. I think that there was ample circumstantial evidence to prove that Alex was guilty of murdering his wife and his son. Now, before I get into that, that's why the financial crimes that I participated in getting him convicted of stealing from Gloria Satterfield's estate, and he got 27 years on the state level. And that's why it was important for me to get the FBI involved and him to be prosecuted on the federal level to get 40 years after the 27 years is done on the state court. So irrespective of what happens with the murder, even if it's retried and he's held not guilty or there's a hung jury, Alex is never getting another breath of fresh air, Matt.
I was going to ask you about that.
as long as he lives. That was so important to us. I argued him not getting a bond in October of 2021 in the Gloria Satterfield case, and he's never gotten out of jail ever since because Judge Newman agreed with me that bond should be denied in a financial crime case, which is extraordinary. So for me, I always knew that I had to get him convicted of the financial crimes because at the time, he wasn't even charged with murder. Now, Paul and Maggie deserve justice. Justice always needs to be hunted to the end of the earth. But the real problem that we face is, what will the next attorney general do? Let's see how these dominoes fall. If the Supreme Court orders a new trial, the next attorney general has to make the decision, am I actually going to retry him? And I have gotten an answer from one of the candidates, Stephen Goldfish, that he would retry him. But David Pascoe, who is very, very close with Dick Harpootlian and switched parties from a Democrat to a Republican, he has not answered that question. And it is possible that an attorney general who takes over for Alan Wilson is going to say, I don't want to spend the state's money and resources, go through this 8-week trial when Alex is already in prison for the rest of his life and then another 40 years.
But there's still no chance, even if he were found not guilty in a retrial, correct, that he would get out?
He can't, because in the 27 years, Matt, he has to do 23. He's 56 years old. So he'll be in Gen Pop in a maximum security prison. The food isn't great. The healthcare isn't great. And it's dangerous. Let's assume he lives to 79. Then he's got to step out of prison and go right to federal prison, and do 40 years. There's no federal parole. He'll end up doing 34. So he's got to live to be about 120 to get that breath of fresh air, which won't happen.
So what's the goal for him then? Is it to stay in touch with Buster? He
doesn't want to be a murderer, Matt. That's the whole goal for him and Harpootlian. This tarnished Dick's legacy. Dick was his legendary in our state, and deservedly so for a career. But Alex is willing to do his time as a thief, but he doesn't want to be the murderer of his wife and his child. You remember Judge Newman in the sentencing talked so in such dark terms about how they're going to visit him every day in his prison cell, and what it's not going to be in a loving way that they're going to visit him, is what Judge Newman said.
Have you talked to Alec?
No, it would be definitely on my bucket list. I would absolutely love to sit down with him, not to talk about the murders so much, but just what would make you, as a lawyer, cross that Rubicon to steal from your clients and then do it continuously from people that are in the worst shape of their lives, lose a loved one, or they have catastrophic injuries that they need lifetime medical care. I'd want to know what caused that switch to trip for you to do that. Now, as far as the murder case goes, I believe I disagree with you. There's ample evidence that he did this. 2 shooters. Okay, what executioners do you know, Matt, that are going to come to a southern property in the darkened night and walk on a property without their own guns? And the plan's going to be, I'm going to break into the house and steal the owner's guns and then kill the wife and son with the owner's guns.
The house was unlocked, number one, and he was also involved in some sort of weird drug world. And then there was that weird heliplan, like the airplane, landing spot on his property. There's something going on that we don't know about. And
okay, but also I'm going to give you some examples. In 102 jailhouse phone calls, he never once said, I'm innocent. He never once said, what is being done to get me out of here? What's being done to find the real killers? He talked about football, hunting, Gamecocks, law school with Buster. When the police came at 10 o'clock at night, his clothes were perfectly clean. Now, Matt, I know you and you know me. If our loved ones had just been shot, we would have grabbed them and screamed to the heavens, please, what happened? we would have blood on us. We would have dirt on us. We would not be pristine clean. The first phone call I would have made would
Or
have
have
been
left the scene because he went to his
right.
mom's house.
The other thing is I would have called Buster immediately, not 42 minutes later. And I would have said, Buster, do not come home. There's killers out there that are trying to kill us. They just killed Mom and Paul. Go to the police station. I wouldn't have told Buster, come on home, son. I need you. I wouldn't have lied.
I'm not saying that he's innocent. I'm just saying that we don't have all the evidence. And I wanted to hear more. I wanted to hear more
what?
foundation,
what would you
more
want?
evidence for the murder. I felt that the trial was mainly focused on him being a liar and a cheat.
Okay, but what more would you want? I mean, he lied about the video. The single biggest piece of evidence was he was there a minute and a half before their stated time of death. And he lied to his son, his only living child that lost his mother and brother for 2 years. He lied to the police. For me, he texted people on the text stream after 10 o'clock at night before he called Buster. He did an internet search. It's all strange. The whole thing with Miss Shelley of, I was there for 20 minutes. No, you weren't, Alex. You were there for 10 minutes. And you're getting married. I can help out with your wedding and all the different stuff. Your daughter's wedding, or it was her wedding.
Well, he was also on drugs.
But he wasn't an opioid addict like Dick said. He never got arrested for DUI. He never missed court. He wasn't reported to the bar by clients that he was slurring his speech. Nobody forced him into rehab. I believe he had an opioid problem, Matt, but not to the level that Dick Harpootlian was trying to sell to the public.
And that brings me back to where is the money? Because there is no way in heck that he used that amount of drugs to equal the millions and millions that he stole, and we don't know where it is.
Well, I think he was being possibly blackmailed. I also believe that there is money out there. I think Mizell, which is 2,800 acres, of which 1,400 is in swampland. I think the money is hidden either on the property or with people that he did business with, or over on an island somewhere. I do think that there is money still there.
Me too. And I wonder who knows about it. I agree with you 1,000% on that. And I know that we're getting into a lot of like what ifs and conspiracy theories with this case, but I think that that's why it was considered the trial of the century, because of the players and who they were supposed to be, the masks that they were wearing, and the mystery still around this and how people interpret the evidence. But when we're talking about the two appeals, one of them really focuses on the Court of Clerk, Becky Hill, who pleaded guilty to, and I think I got this right, perjury, obstruction of justice, and misconduct. And now that's part of the record for that part of the appeal. So how big?
But it wasn't a pleading of guilt for interfering with the jury.
Right. But, she's the whole reason why we had that one-day hearing with Judge Toal.
2 days. 2 days.
Well, when they brought him in and they were testifying, which
2-day hearing. Yeah,
I thought that there was going to be a decision that day.
Yeah. She did make her decision from the bench. But the issue is, look, we were very shocked from a lawyer standpoint of how hard the Supreme Court criticized Justice Toal and how hard they went at Judge Newman. And maybe that's a feeling that the justices have when Justice Toal was a Chief Justice. I don't know, but I did not see that coming, Matt.
I thought she was fantastic. I really enjoyed being in her courtroom.
So did I.
Over that time
and I was highly critical of her, Matt, before, and I went inside her chambers to ask to speak to her. I was very critical of her when she was appointed because of reputation and some of the past dealings I had with her. But I went in and I apologized to her in chambers and said I was wrong. You did an amazing job presiding over this, and you gave everybody a fair shot, and she thanked me for it and forgave me for being critical of her.
Well, she seems like a really cool person just outside of the robe,
Oh
and
yeah,
I loved her line.
she's a judge's judge. You better be prepared when you walk in her courtroom, Matt. You
Oh,
better
really?
be
Well, I
prepared.
loved
Yeah.
her line. Becky Hill was attracted by the siren call of celebrity. I can't tell you how many times I used that when I was reporting from the hearing.
Oh yeah.
She's quite something, and I really wish that I know we couldn't show the jurors, but I really wish that the viewers could have seen more from that hearing. There was so many nuances of things that were happening, and so many interesting people in the gallery that had a stake
Oh
in this
yeah.
from the very beginning.
Well, I'll tell you how reasonable she was. One of my clients was going away the week of the Monday that she had the big hearing, and was going to have to miss her cruise. And Justice Toal said, "We're going to start this hearing on the previous Friday so that she could testify and still go away on her cruise." She didn't have to do that. She could have just told me, "I'm sorry, Mr. Blaine, your client's just going to have to miss the cruise." But she marshaled all the resources. Can you imagine that, of court administration and bailiffs and everything? And we started the hearing in January of 2024 on a Friday, and it finished on a Monday.
Hmm. Well, how are your clients doing?
They're all good. We ended up representing 6 of the victims of Alex, and we recovered over $14 million for all the victims, $9.2 million for the Satterfields. Some that Alex had missed the statute of limitations on, and we recovered from an insurance company. And the jurors have gone on with their life. I keep in touch with about 2 of them. And, one of the things, Matt, that we have to be careful in our justice system is jurors render a verdict. Then they go out in the world and they hear from the Matt Johnsons and the Eric Blands and their family. And then they start to question, should I have made the right decision? Did I make the right decision? Should I change? And we don't want them to be salted with, legal analysts like me and journalists like you, because they could change their mind. That's why it's so important that when they render their verdict, do they get polled, and do they have to affirm that the verdict is of their own free will without duress or coercion?
Yeah, and not to get too much off topic, but I found that to be a problem with the first Karen Reed trial that I covered, when they weren't really pulled in public, and
Right.
then all of that wasn't really made clear. Okay, so, and first off, so the jurors, they're good. Thank you for that update. How are the Satterfield boys?
They're great.
Okay.
They are enjoying life. They're workers. They didn't get their money and just go poolside. They're very smart with their money. It's going to last them hopefully for the rest of their lives. But they miss their mother. They certainly didn't inject themselves in this, and they're very private. But here's the most amazing thing, Matt. They forgive Alex. The entire family forgives Alex. They don't bear malice towards him. Look, I'm Jewish. I'm an Old Testament guy. I mean, I would never be in that position that they are, but it's a testament to their faith in Christianity that they have forgiven him and they've moved on.
They are really special people. I've had the honor of being in their presence during the testimony, and they're just really stand-up men. And I wish them all the best. But I know that a lot of people wondering about them. And, I still have questions about how she died, though. I know that
we all do. I have to believe that Alex was telling the truth, but he's the only one that has repeated that it was the dogs. Maggie and Paul that were witnesses aren't with us anymore. And so it's only Alex who said that, when he reached down and he whispered in the glory of what happened, and she said, the dogs. Remember, if it wasn't the dogs, just because you fall on somebody's steps doesn't mean they have liability. You have to show that the steps were defective, that maybe they weren't built according to code, or there was ice on them, or that the dogs caused the fall. But if I'm on your property, Matt, and I just fall on your steps and everything's fine the way they were constructed, my own negligence doesn't mean that you're liable. But Alex came up with this scheme, I believe, because if you look at his income tax returns, his income really was dropping off from 2013-14. He was banging millions and millions in 2009 and 10 when he stole from the Pickneys and the Plyler sisters, my other clients. But towards 2018, his income dropped dramatically. And, he's got that big monkey eating every month, whether it's Mizell, it's the airplanes, it's the going to the islands or being a Gamecock fan. And, in the Hulu series, he spent $63,000 in 2 days at Atlantis. That's amazing, So I hear you. I do. Is there a question on how she died? People are asking it, but I choose to believe he was being honest. It was the dogs, and that's why we were able to recover the insurance money.
Yeah, and I want to believe that as well. But again, the two people that were there, as you mentioned, are dead because they were murdered by Alec. And, their 911 call was really strange. And,
Paul was abusive. Maggie was indifferent.
Yeah, and I just wonder with that troubled kid that really exposed Alec and the whole family and what was going on, with the boat crash. I mean, he was so troubled. That never really went to trial. He never paid justice himself. So, what else was he capable of?
I think, I blame the parents getting to understand Paul. He was an unlikable kid to some. He was overindulged and undisciplined, and that's the fault of the parents. They drank in front of him. They let him drink in front of them. He had the rollover accident when he was 17, and they swept it under the rug. He knew he was basically bulletproof because of his father and the grandfather's prominence. But he was just a young kid. I don't write a book on somebody and close the chapters when they're 22 years old. They have the rest of their life to right the ship. But I do blame Alex for how they raised Paul. And Gloria did her best. He was very close to Gloria, my client, Gloria Satterfield. But I do think that Alex had a lot of hostile feelings towards Paul because without the boating accident, none of this comes to light. None of the financial crimes comes to light. And when Paul had the accident and killed Mallory, Mallory died in the process, it brought journalists like you and my co-host Mandy Matney to go investigate these people. And I think Alex had a lot of resentment for that. I also think that Alex had mercy for Paul in the sense that he knew he was going to get prison time for this death. There were too many eyes on it. This wasn't going to get swept under the rug. The Mothers Against Drunk Driving and all the journalists like you, Paul was going to get 7 to 10 years, maybe even a little more for this. And Alex knew that he would never survive in maximum security prison. Just look at your picture right now. Look at the size of Alex, former football player. He's tough as nails. He's fought when he was in Gen Pop before he's now in solitary confinement at Broad River Road. But look at Paul. He's a small kid, and he's a hothead. And Alex knows it isn't going to be easy for him on the inside if he got sentenced to 10 years. It would be very rough for Paul. And so there is a theory out there that Alex killed Paul because he didn't want him ever to go to prison.
Maybe he planned on killing himself as well, and he chickened out.
That's a good point. It's a good point. I never heard that. I just think he's too much of a narcissist to do it. Right.
Yes. Agreed. So it was called the trial of the century, 6 weeks. We were both there together. What does season 2 look like, so to speak?
Well, I think the trial will be different if there is going to be a trial. The question is going to be, does the Supreme Court cut the financial crime introduction? And so then it's going to be a pure murder trial. And they're going to have to come up with a new motive. But again, I think circumstantially, there is enough to commit for murder, convict. Did I think during the first trial he was going to get convicted? No. I thought there was going to be a hung jury. I never can forecast a not guilty verdict. It's something I can't see on the landscape, but I definitely can see a hung jury, because they're going to be a juror like you to say, I need more murder evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need more murder evidence. And maybe we'll get that with this. I think that they still bring in the money motive, but the scope is less or smaller. But does he take the stand?
No, but now the real evidentiary issue is, can they use his testimony against him because he already testified under oath? That's always the fear I have as a lawyer, putting my client on the stand in a criminal case, because you waive your Fifth Amendment rights, and now these are admissions. And so I haven't researched it yet on how deep they can go into his prior sworn testimony, but I think it's going to be an issue.
Yeah, and to answer the other question that I get a lot, no, they were not tears. It was a bunch of snot coming out of his nose that he was wiping.
Look at those eyes. Go back to that previous photograph. He's got shark eyes. Yeah. I've never seen darker eyes on a man than his.
Well, it was also weird lighting in there too. It was like a 200, 300-year-old building. Beautiful, but it was weird.
Yep. Yeah. Do they get a change of venue if you get a new trial? And the answer is, it does. You could go to England and people know about it. I mean, I was in September of 2023, I went over to England and golfed with some buddies. And I was walking, and one of the caddies asked me, what do you do for a living? I said, I'm a lawyer. Where are you from? South Carolina. And he said, isn't that where the Murdaugh case was from? And I said, yeah, I happen to be involved in it. And the guy looked at me and said, that's right, I saw you on TV. I mean, it was universal. It was the trial of the century. In our state, it used to be Susan Smith. In the 90s, she drove her kids into a lake and then blamed it on an African-American. Then it was Dylan Roof, who killed the Emmanuel 9 at the Emmanuel Church in Charleston. He was a white supremacist. But this case is so far greater. I mean, it's a John Grisham nonfiction book. John doesn't have to come here and write fiction. He just comes here and reports on it like you're doing. You got the dynasty of a family that's been in charge of the solicitor's office for 100 years. You have a law firm that literally prints money, Matt, that it was voted Hampton County the third worst judicial hellhole in the country by the American Bar Magazine, ABA, American Bar Association, in 2005 because of the just outlandish verdicts and settlements that the Murdaugh firm gets from those jurors and in that county.
Wasn't he president or something?
He was president of the Trial Lawyers Association in South Carolina. But think about it. The family controls the criminal justice system in Hampton County and the civil justice system. When I called for the 911 tape, a lady answered the phone. Her name was Murdaugh. When I had to subpoena a probate file from the probate court, a Murdaugh answered the phone. So they owned it. They controlled it.
What did you think of the Hulu series?
Well, I was upset that I wasn't in it, but no, only kidding. But yeah, they didn't mention me. It was the only series that I wasn't mentioned. And I thought I played
that was strange too. You were such
I played
a
very
important
role, obviously, because I represented 6 of the victims and 6 of the jurors. And it was my partner and I getting SLED involved that got the Gloria Satterfield criminal charges in the first place. But I thought it was well done. I thought Jason Clerk was insanely good, and so was Patricia Arquette. And I thought the kid that played Paul did a great job. There was poetic license. Gloria was not alive at the time of the boat crash, but the way they wrote this story, she was still alive. She had died, Matt, a whole year before the boat crash. But I guess they took poetic license and they wanted her to have a larger role than she did.
Well, she had a big role in that life just in general and raising those boys.
She didn't die in vain. No, she died for a purpose.
She was a beautiful person. So how do we get a hold of you?
You could come to my law firm at www.blandrichter.com. You could call me on the phone at 803-256-9664. I have a podcast that I do, Cup of Justice. I have a book, like you mentioned in the beginning, Anything But Bland, thank you so much, which talks about, my early life of overcoming obstacles, some of the famous cases I had besides Alex Murdaugh. I was involved with the James Brown death, and I represented Ric Flair, my childhood wrestling hero, and I was involved in the Hunley submarine case. But the last third of the book is about Alex Murdaugh and how fascinating the civil and criminal trials, the civil matters in the criminal trial was. It was just, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm grateful that I was able to be at the right place at the right time and answer the phone call when Mark Tinsley called me on the phone and asked if I wanted to represent Gloria Satterfield. But, just like you do, we're ready to answer the phone. We're ready because we prepare ourselves and we live a life that is going to put us in the thick of the bramble when it's time.
Well, this has been a pleasure. Thank you. And hopefully we get some answers soon, and then maybe you can come back and talk about your opinion about it all.
Anytime you want to have me on, I'm there for you.
The one thing that we do know as we wait for the decision from the high court is that this guy is never getting out. He has already pled guilty to the financial crimes, which puts him away for the rest of his life. But what does a new trial look like, right? Does he even take the stand? Does he testify? Or is his words from the first trial read in court and used against him? Does Buster testify? Do we hear from all of the same players? Do they allow in the money motive? And that was several weeks of testimony. Is there something new with new technology with the vehicle data? Do they find the guns? There's a lot of questions as to what that trial might look like. Let me know in the comments below. But for now, I'll keep you posted on the case. Take care of yourself. We'll see you next time.